You're listening to part one of our conversation with Tony Hernandez, President and CEO of the Defense Credit Union Council. In this episode, we'll explore Tony's unique path from the Air Force to leading DCUC, discuss the Council's expanding mission, and unpack the challenges and opportunities facing credit unions. Let's get started. Welcome to 22 Minutes in Lending. I'm your host, Vince Passione, and today I'm excited to be joined by Tony Hernandez, the President and CEO of the Defense Credit Union Council. Tony leads the principal trade association dedicated exclusively to credit unions, serving our nation's military and veterans, representing tens of millions of members worldwide. Before joining DCUC, he served a distinguished career in the United States Air Force, retiring as a full colonel and holding multiple senior leadership and command roles. Tony, it is great to have you on the podcast, and welcome and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Vince. It's a pleasure being here. Just to kind of tell a lot of things of what we're doing, but just a great partnership with you guys, and happy to do it.
Well, Tony, most listeners, I'm sure they have met you and seen you speak before. Certainly I have. But how about sort of a quick introduction of your journey from the military over to the credit union system?
Sure. I was a finance officer when I came in the Air Force. The Air Force was having a pilot reduction. They were banking pilots, not the banking that we talk about, but they were taking people that had their wings and putting them in support roles because they didn't have enough airplanes for them to do on it. So I had a pilot slot, and I was going to be an Air Force pilot. And so I got a degree in finance, corporate finance. And when my pilot slot got eliminated, they were like, "What do we do with this guy?" So they made me a finance officer. So, and which was fine. I mean, it's very detailed. Very think of green shade. The green shade accountants that do this stuff. I am not that guy. I can do it, but that's not my type. And so, I didn't struggle with it. I mean, I got several distinguished graduate stuff and progressed through the career field. Earned my master comptroller badge, and ended up becoming, it all culminated with me being the CFO, or the director of financial management and comptroller, which is the CFO equivalent. But because I was a comptroller, the military banking program falls under the financial management. And so I was familiar with the program. But my journey wasn't typical because, and I've told this story in many audiences. My wife worked for DCUC for 16 years before I
Oh, I
did.
realized that. Okay.
Yeah,
So she preceded you there.
She did. How that came about was when I was a captain newly assigned to the Pentagon, and the office I worked, I started off as a comptroller policy analyst. I ended up becoming the comptroller war planner for the entire career field during 9/11, and then later on I worked standing up, Strategic Command, Northern Command, and I was a budget analyst for these new commands. But anyway, the office I started out in, the Air Force banking officer walked down to my cubicle, and he said, "Hey, there's this Army colonel that just took over president and CEO of this thing called Defense Credit Union Council."
That was Artie?
That was Artie,
Okay.
and Artie was a retired Army colonel, and he needed to hire a part-time bookkeeper. Well, my wife Jennifer was a controller for a Fortune 500 company, and part-time work. She got the job, and and off she went. And I was familiar with it. I'd met Artie, kind of understood what they did, but didn't really go to do much until the credit union, when I was a comptroller squadron commander at McCord Air Force Base near Seattle. We had honorary commanders, right? And both of them were from the credit. One was from the credit union, and one was from the bank. And we worked that banking program. Well, the credit union won the United States Air Force Distinguished Credit Union of the Year for 2005. And so that award, and we still do it today, is recognized at the DCUC annual conference. So that was my first time going to a DCUC annual conference in uniform, to watch our credit union get recognized. And then I took the pictures. And then what that started is I started, becoming Jennifer's plus one at all the DCUC conferences. And I was always taught by my mentors to, dress up. Every day is your interview, shake hands, and our conferences are all CEOs and directors. So these are the
Yep.
people that I definitely want to make sure they know my name whenever I get ready to retire. And when that day came, DCUC created a chief operating officer position, and I applied for it and got it. Here's a rub, Vince, and I tell this, because I'm still living and breathing today. When I started at DCUC, Jennifer can no longer work at DCUC because she was my wife, and I'm the number two guy there. And so I asked Artie. I said, "Well, I get it, but who gets to tell Jennifer?" He goes, "Sounds like a good job for the COO." So,
So did you? Did
yeah.
you?
Oh, I
Oh,
fired
wow.
her. That sounds harsh. I
Did
mean,
you give her a good severance package at least?
well, now she gets to travel with me, so it worked out pretty good. But I'll tell you, that was a long drive home, and it wasn't like The Apprentice where I go, "You're fired." It was more like, "Sweetheart, dear, can we sit down? Can you put the frying pan down? Stop cooking."
No loaded weapons in the house, I hope. There you go. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a
And then a
great
year
story.
later, I became the CEO, and then everything else that's happened ever since then. So I've been the CEO for 8 years, 8.5 years, going on 9.
So we met probably five, I think it was five GACs ago.
Yeah.
And I think Jennifer was with you at that
Yep.
GAC when we first started our conversation, and you told me about the mission. And my recollection is probably about 180 defense-related credit unions and probably well over close to 50 million members. So pretty big and asset-wise, probably over $500 billion in assets. Did I miss anything about the membership base and the way you
Well,
look at your members?
yeah. When you met me, we were still a pure um, military, niche, trade association. When I became the CEO in 2017, that's when we separated from CUNA. In fact, DCUC, Defense Credit Union Council, we were a CUNA council in
I
1962.
didn't realize that part of the story.
Yeah, and that's why we kept the name because it's part of our history, and people can remember that and relate to it. But we were a niche organization, council, and then we separated, which made us our own independent trade association. And it's about the time when I met you about 5 years ago when we were asked by the Department of Veteran Affairs to help the military banks with what they call the Veteran Benefit Banking Program. And that was something we had talked about for a while because, each National Defense Authorization Act specifies a fiscal year end strengths for the military. And you add up the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, and now Space Force, it's about 1.2 million members of the military in uniform on active duty. And so that was the size of the market or who we were serving. But when you look at the veteran market, it's 18 million veterans that are in
Exactly.
every zip
Yep.
code. And because they're in every zip code, and we got this from the VA, it stands to reason that there's at least one veteran in every single credit union across the United States. And so the DCUC board allowed us to open up the membership to all credit unions. And that's, started
Ah,
off a little slow. And then over the last 2 years, we've really taken off. So now we're about 225 member credit unions, um, about 45 million members, and then the 500 million or 500 billion in assets, collective assets, collective memberships. Where we're at, and we're looking to add a whole lot more. Our goals are to grow to a third of the industry, and then half of the industry, and then who knows where we go from there. So we're getting very big, very fast. Plus
so
the industry's coming down too, right? All the
yeah.
consolidations. So we'll meet them pretty close.
Tony, I want to take it back a little bit because I thought this comment about the council was interesting. I did not, as I said, I didn't realize that you were a council in DCUNA. And so was that something you initiated or they initiated to sort of separate it out?
So what happened? There were a lot of credit unions on military bases that had problems with the Pentagon. With with regulations because military credit unions on base fall under it's the DoD financial management regulation, and there's only one bank and one credit union, and enforcing that because everybody wanted to be on base, but you could only have one of each. Um, how you can solicit, how you can interact with the military, different programs. So it's almost like another regulator. And
Hmm.
in 1963, they were still forming the policies, and so at the time there was 400 military bases and about 400 member DCUC or defense credit unions, and so they formed this council um, to to band together so that they could go in collectively into the Pentagon and advocate for better regulations or clearer guidance and clearer regulations.
Now, Tony, as you sort of expand the mission of DCUC, how does the core, I think there are like 128 or 130 defense related credit affiliated credit unions, how do they react to it? Is it good news for them that your mission is now a bit broader, representing the broader community? Or do they feel like, well, wait a minute, there are some very specific needs
We
that
don't, we're
addressing?
not abandoning what we're doing. The things we do for military and veteran communities, because that's a nonpartisan issue. You walk into a Democrat office on Capitol Hill and they
Sure.
love their veterans, right?
Yep.
You walk into a Republican, they love their veterans, or an independent. We get a lot of meetings that others can't because of who we represent. And we partner with a lot of organizations. And by the time this thing aired, the letter will be out there. But we're looking to sign a joint letter with the American Legion on veteran business member lending because they see that as important for their membership as well. And so, more hasn't dropped yet, but we look to deliver that to Congress on member business lending. So we won't give that up. What they see now is as we've taken on a wider aperture and our advocacy efforts, and we advocate for industry wide with a veteran flavor because that gets us in the door. And so now that we've taken on a wider advocacy role, we're very active and we're fast, quick, and efficient. And we've been getting results because of who we are and who we represent. Now we're giving credit unions a choice. Do I continue to pay for, 50 staffers and, all this other stuff, or do I pay for DCUC and turn the money to build their own credit union, hire their own governmental affairs person, or
Right.
build out their AI team? And so now we're offering them a real choice in the industry.
Well, you're going down the path to my next question. So, we just saw not too long ago, right? Two trade associations, national trade associations merge. Everyone's like, "Wow, long time coming. This is great." Now all we have is one organization representing credit unions nationally and on the Hill. And now here comes DCUC, and you're expanding the mission of DCUC. So, how does that play? And how does America's Credit Union look at this?
Well, and not too favorably. Your last
Surprise,
question,
right?
obviously.
Yeah.
I think if you want, you definitely want. I hate to use the word, monopoly, right? You don't want any competition, but that's kind of what we're doing is we're providing competition, and in any free market economy, competition's good because it helps the consumer. Right now, we give people a choice, but we also give them a second opinion. And we see, for the most part, we see the same things that America's Credit Union, where we can collaborate, we will. And I think that's important. And I think it's good for us to add our voice and our credibility and our reputation on Capitol Hill. But sometimes we see things differently. Have a difference. We have a different perspective, and sometimes that's healthy in trying to triangulate, what an industry position is. And so that's more how I see our role, not so much, as opposing what the other, what the leagues or what America's credit unions or other national trade associations are doing, but offering another choice. And I think you get a healthier position the more we can challenge folks or find that sweet spot. You have the American Banker Association, you have the National Banker Association, you have the
Right.
Independent Community Bankers Association of America, You have the commercial banks. You have the leagues, and there's multiple. You have the, I'm sorry, the state level bankers association. You have all these other voices. It never confuses Congress. Banks tend to get what they want, and so why do we think there should only be one for credit unions? So I disagree with the with there can be only one. Kind of a Highlander
Yeah.
competition. We're 10% of the cost of what CUNA was, or what America's credit unions right now, and then you add on the league, so it's not cost prohibitive. Especially for the small credit, you're talking a couple $100. When you get down to that level, and so they get that choice. They get actionable information from us. What we're trying to do since I become CEO is really focus on member value. And so we're a tenth of the price, we're twice the value, right? And we're proving it. And so if our goal is that kind of a lost leader, right? The credit unions see all the stuff DCUC is doing, and we're only a fraction of the price. What's in it for them is they get that 90% to put back into their credit union.
Now, Tony, any examples of where you've actually worked with America's Credit Union on some of the advocacy issues on the Hill?
Yeah, we work with them. In fact, we're working with America's credit unions right now. There was a letter that came out on December 2nd to 21 credit unions on their overdraft and non-sufficient fund fee policy. And we've teamed up. We started working, doing different things in a different way of getting it. But I think it's serving those that are affected, and it'll serve the rest of the industry. But one thing we said yesterday is for those that are going to respond, let's have kind of the same general content in it. Because I think that if we can show a coordination and unity in the same story, that becomes a more powerful, response. So
Now, I
we're
gotta
working
imagine
with
that carries over to America's Credit Unions, right? That you've got to coordinate the message,
Well,
right?
yeah. So I contacted Scott Simpson yesterday. That came out in our meeting that we had with
Hmm.
21, and we agreed to work that out together. I said, you don't need a DCUC version. You don't need an America's Credit Union, and then each of the leagues, you don't need a different league version either. And so we're going to work together on that, and that just happened last night. And I think that's going to be really good. Plus, um, what we'll be able to capture from this is the next time Congress comes down with something like that, I think we're going to have a very good response strategy. One of the things that we've learned in DCUC is the minute that it goes public, a letter like that, um, you need to have an op-ed ready to go. And the reason why you do that is because if a larger media outlet picks up the story, they're going to go Google it. And wouldn't you rather have a credit union narrative at the top of that Google search rather than waiting a couple days or not doing anything at all?
Sure. So talking about getting a bigger voice on the Hill, so I saw your letter to Russell Voigt at the CFPB about the Credit Union Advisory Council, and you were pretty bold. You actually offered, I think, to pay, I don't know if it was to
Yeah,
pay all of the obligations to cover it, but give us a little background on that, the benefit of the CUAC, and then, you know, why you went so far as to say, hey, we'd actually pay for this.
sure. Um, One, there isn't a credit union voice. I think the letter also said that there's plenty of former bankers on in Treasury positions and at OCC
Yeah.
and on Capitol Hill and advising the different financial services or banking committees. Where's the credit union voice? Yeah, we have NCUA, but there's only so much that can do. And there was this credit union advisory council under CFPB, that had CEOs that were on it. And so, most of those meetings occurred in the virtual world, right? And so, what does it cost to put on a Teams meeting, or and using a government site to do it? Nothing. What does it cost us to host that an hour of our time when we do it? And then administrative, we'd offer to help capture minutes and do all that stuff. That stuff's easy to do. So, you know, when CFPB was hosting it, I don't know if they wanted to fly people in or host it in theirs. I thought it was. I didn't think it was a strong argument saying, "Well, we're going to do away with it because it costs too much."
Yeah.
We're just
Exactly.
saying, hey, it doesn't cost much, especially in this day and age. And if you're worried about it, we'll cover it. Yeah, it was a little bold for us to do that, but who else is doing it in the industry?
Absolutely.
That's what we're
Absolutely.
doing.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, as always, to our listeners. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you back here at our next 22 Minutes in Lending. That's the end of part one of our conversation with Tony Hernandez. Stay tuned for part two, where we'll hear Tony's perspective on how credit unions respond in times of crisis, adapt to new technologies, and support the unique needs of their members.
Thank you for listening to the 22 Minutes in Lending podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. You'll find links to any resources mentioned in the show notes. If you're enjoying our show, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review.